guys, you have finally reached the end of my tutorial, and I would like to devote this last video to some common questions I get about the group presentations. So the first question that I would like to answer that I've received is, what is an ad campaign? I've gotten this question so often, and I do want to clarify what I mean when I say an ad campaign. Here's the definition. It is a company's release of a series of ads, usually in the same year, within the same period. It might be seasonal, that share a common theme. Your group has to select a particular ad campaign that the company has released. So make sure that maybe, when you begin your research, you have a date in mind. Like if you want to do Coca-Cola, for example, which campaign would you like to focus on? So just to give you an example, I chose Coca-Cola's 2019 Christmas Polar Bear campaign. I do want to clarify that Coca-Cola has been using their polar bear for like the past 25 years. But every year, every Christmas time, they release a whole other, set of advertisements that are related to the polar bear. Sometimes they use the polar bear, sometimes they don't. So it really depends on the year that you're analyzing. And if you look at this print ad, again, this is from 2019 campaign, and the slogan underneath says, "We may look different, but there's more that unites us than divides us." And then when you click on the commercial ad, which I would like you guys to do in a moment, press pause on me and watch the commercial, you will see another advertisement that's from the 2019 Christmas campaign that again has this entire theme of unity and camaraderie and definitely like friendship and the power of a group. So I thought that this was a very good example to demonstrate to you that when I talk about an ad campaign, I'm talking about the ads that a company chooses to release. And sometimes the company has a certain idea in mind. Maybe they have like a unity theme that they're aiming for. Maybe, the company is wanting to target like an event coming up. For example, the Olympics. Olympic campaigns are a little bit different, and the ads that are created during that season are a little bit different. Winter campaigns that feature Christmas and all that other stuff, they're a little bit different. Summer campaigns are different. So that's what I mean by a campaign. And if you guys find a campaign that you are interested in, but you're not quite sure whether or not it qualifies as a campaign, please ask me. The second question is, how do we decide if an ad campaign is a success or failure? This is a question I've received before, and I think it's a very good question. Like, how do we know which position to take? And the reason why I think this is such a good question is sometimes the rhetorical elements are strong, but then there's something about the ad that doesn't quite seem to work. Sometimes the rhetorical elements might be missing, like an advertisement might not have logos at all, but then the ad itself seems to be a success. I mean, I would say the Geico ads are probably a good example of a rhetorically weak ad. Like I'm thinking of, I don't remember the year, I would have to look it up, but they had a series of ads where the main purpose was to confuse you. It was supposed to give us a non sequitur where they're talking about one thing, but then they like immediately transition over, but with Geico, you can save money. And it was confusing because they were talking about something completely different. So that complete non sequitur theme was a common element of the ad campaign that Geico chose. So I would think that would be rhetorically weak because the entire campaign was based on a fallacy, but the Geico ads did wonderfully on TV. So I guess my point is that you shouldn't look at the financial success. You shouldn't look at the popularity of these ad campaigns. You should look at the authenticity and the strength of the argument within the ads. So I put over here, approach the campaign from a critical thinking perspective by looking at all of the parts. So when you look at the components, if most of those components are strong in your opinion in terms of their argument, then maybe what you're trying to say is the campaign is also a success. So I gave the Pepsi, Kendall Jenner Pepsi campaign as an example because this commercial got banned. In fact, all of the ads associated with it got banned. There was even like a few print ads that were then taken out. It got banned because it offended a lot of people. But just because it offends a certain audience doesn't mean that it was rhetorically weak. Now, I am not arguing that this was a strong campaign. Not at all. But what I'm trying to say is look past the financial aspect, look past the fact that this is Pepsi and they're popular, look past whether or not it's popular with consumers and audiences, look at the authenticity of the ad itself. And I think that's a better approach to take. My third tip, here's another question. Any tips on finding strong pathos? I would give you guys the advice that you should look to Jib Fowles' appeals, but don't look at all 15 of them. Only select one or two of the most dominant appeals that you are seeing in the ad campaign, which are the ones that seem to stand out the most. So here's my example. This is from the Child Health Foundation, and I would say that this advertisement uses two of Fowles' appeals. Number one, the nurture appeal, and number two, the safety appeal. In fact, if I were to select one, I would choose the nurture appeal because I think our yearning to take care of this child dominates everything else. So what I'm trying to say is don't make a list of every appeal that you find. I would say choose one or two so you can actually analyze these appeals in a stronger, in a deeper way. Another question is any tips on finding strong ethos? I actually do have some tips for you, and I wrote it down here. I'm advising you guys that whatever campaign you select, make sure to also read the fine print. So I put over here, look for dates, websites, phone numbers, addresses, hashtags, any other relevant information. Basically information that the company is putting forward that is making them seem more trustworthy. So if you look at the ad on the right, there's a hashtag here, hashtag never21. And if you research this hashtag, you will find out more about the campaign that PETA is releasing. Here's another one. You won't be able to see this, by the way, unless you look closely at the fine print. It says visit PETA.org, and they're giving us a website and they're inviting us to visit. And all of this relates to ethos, and all of it relates to the ethos within the ad. So I do want you guys to pay attention to these things, pay attention to the dates and the fine print that we might not have noticed and hashtags that we might have overlooked, because all of those are indicators of ethos. Of course, ethos can also be the celebrity that is being used in the ad, like over here, Dave Navarro. But it's also in the subtle mentioning of this kind of information. Another question is any tips on finding strong logos? And I wanted to give you guys an example here. We know that logos is supposed to be fact-based information like data and statistics, definitions, analogies, especially logical analogies. When you look at the ad on the right, it doesn't seem like there's any logos when you first look at it. But then you start to see it because you have to analyze everything, including the fine print. It says, first of all, 100% pure squeezed. That's one detail. That's a fact-based percentage being used. And then it says never from concentrate, which is also important. See, it's right there on the product itself. And finally, you may not have noticed this, but there's fine print at the bottom that says gently pasteurized. And I initially did not notice that, and then when I looked at it again, I was like, oh, there it is. So there's actually 3 pieces of logos that dominate this advertisement that otherwise I might not have noticed, but I did notice because I looked at the ad carefully and closely. So if I chose this as part of my campaign, I would have to look at all parts of it, including the parts that might not be visible to the eye, or you have to look carefully to be able to see. Another question I get is any tips on analyzing the style or composition of ad campaigns? And I thought this was one that really, if you were to look at the style and composition, I think it's a good example. I think you should ask yourself some questions when it comes to the overall style of the ads. Is there anything distinct in the ad in terms of color? Now, keep in mind, color can be symbolic, so we want to look at the symbolism of colors. For example, in this ad, we have a lot of black. The entire background is black. It creates more of a somber tone. But then we have one area of red, and that's the part that emphasizes the 30 miles per hour. Now, again, color can be symbolic, and that's something you guys might want to incorporate in your argument. Are there any musical choices? If there's a commercial ad, is there a certain song that they're playing? And does the song have certain lyrics that maybe the company is emphasizing? Maybe you might have a certain beat, like I gave you guys the Missy Elliott song, Get Your Freak On, which maybe makes everybody want to get up and dance. Also, ask yourself, does the campaign have specific animations or editing techniques? And just to give you some examples, camera angles, long or narrow shots, film-like techniques. Sometimes they tell it through a story, and is the anecdotal impact, is it powerful or does it weaken the advertising? And finally, do you notice certain patterns, repetition, font, organization in the ad? So I put here, in my analysis of this advertisement on the left, there's a certain symmetrical style. There's 2 columns right here. There's certain language that is being repeated right there. Again, there's the black background. There's the red circle. That's around 30. So I think there's a lot to analyze here in terms of the style and the composition. And in terms of the style, there is a certain tone that emerges. Like I said, there's a somber tone, but then also there's a certain level of seriousness that's accompanying the ad. So there's a whole lot, and I think that these questions are a good starting point if you guys are wanting to analyze the style and composition of your campaign. And finally, last one, are we allowed to focus on just a single ad from a campaign if it's compelling or powerful enough? My answer is yes. If it's a commercial ad, and I wanted to give you guys the one that I gave as an example, the extra love story, and this campaign was very successful. It gained popularity, but I also think that it had a lot of rhetorical success as well. I think the song had a lot to do with it, the stylistic impact, the movie-like element. So there would be a lot, if I were to choose this as a group, there would be a lot for me to talk about. So if you guys would like to narrow your focus on a single ad from a campaign instead of the entire campaign itself, I don't mind at all. I would say go for it. I hope I answered your questions. If you guys have more, please feel free to ask. That's what I'm here for. And good luck on your group presentations.